Today is June 27th, 2024. My name is Melissa Ackerman, and I will be interviewing Jennifer Troice today. How are you today?
Good, how are you?
Thank you for coming in. Was this your first time visiting Israel, the mission?
No, it wasn't. It was my third time.
Okay.
I had been there for the first time about, when was it, like 2011 was my first time. I was there with the March of the Living.
Oh, okay. Where did you grow up?
In Mexico City.
Oh, okay. My son-in-law's from Mexico City. Okay, so that was the most recent time before the mission?
I went, like, that year I went twice.
Okay.
After the March of the Living, I went with my family, like 6 months later, and then right now.
And what made you decide that that was the trip you wanted to go on?
So, October 7th was really hard on all of us. But for me, it had a bit of a closer, it was closer to home than the usual Jew, because when I was 17, on my way to school, I was kidnapped.
Oh my God. Okay.
So I was kidnapped for 12 days. I was blindfolded and treated terribly. And unfortunately, I really understand what the Jews in Israel, well, are Israelis, because they're not only Jews, are going through. So it was tough at first, and then when the deal happened in late November, December, that was very triggering to hear the testimonies. But then in December, I got an email saying that there was a mission trip being planned for February, and that was like a moment where it made sense to me. Because it was like, you ask yourself why it happens to you, and in that moment it was like, okay, now it makes sense. It happened to me because I have to be there and show them that they can be okay.
Did your family have reservations about you going? You have young children, don't you?
I have 3 boys, and yes, my husband was very nervous about it, but I couldn't not go.
You didn't have, you felt like it was the time and you needed to do that?
Yeah. It gave me a purpose. It gave my past a purpose.
Was it hard for you to just look at it while you were there? And
not really. I think I'm well curated. You know, like I've been with the subject for 20 years now. So I have healed very well from it. I have turned my trauma into art, and now I sculpt, and it's my silver lining. So I understand how painful it is to see these things and feel them and be with people who are going through it, but at the same time I have learned how to block the suffering inside myself, because I know it's not happening to me, and I do no one any good service by suffering for them. I want to be their support, not melt, you know.
What were some of the most meaningful things you experienced on this particular trip?
So I would say it's hard to pick and choose, because it was all
a handful of.
It was all very impressive, but I'd say having lunch with the soldiers, we were surprised because we didn't know who we were going to meet. It was all like very last minute decisions. Like, we had an itinerary, but they don't know, like, depending on what's going on and who you're going to see.
Correct.
So once we were there, we found out that we were having lunch with the brigade that rescued the hostages in February. And that for me was like, I felt like he was my hero, you know, like he was rescuing me, and that was like very special to me. And I have become friends with the commander of the brigade. I gave him, so I took some bronze sculptures on the trip with me that I had originally created on my first year anniversary back home, and they're called the Helping Hands. And so I took some of these with me, and I gave Roy, the commander of the brigade 5155, a helping hand, and I told him my story, and I told him, you know, I took out a picture of the guy that's responsible for me in Mexico. And I said, this is my Roy. And it's just...
That gives me chills. Wow.
So I gave him one of my hands, and he just couldn't believe it. And it turns out that they know each other.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Small world.
It is a small world.
And we kept on talking, and he had told me that he was going to leave the hand on his desk so that the days that he was off, he would see it. And then he told me that he couldn't bring himself to leave it.
So he
keeps it in his backpack.
Oh.
It brings him a lot of hope and strength, and I love that.
That's
I could
beautiful.
do something like that with something that for me was like a small gesture.
And have you kept up with him since you've been back?
I have.
Does he have a family? And
he has 2 kids, and I actually texted with him today, and he's with them right now. So yeah, he's having a good day. But that was one. Another one was in the family forum, where we heard Aviram's testimony about his nephew being kept captive, and I gave him a helping hand, and he couldn't believe it either. And I gave him a hug. We were always on the run, so it wasn't like it was a 30-second introduction. And when I left a Post-it with my number in the lobby, and he called me the next day. By then I had already tried to reach a lot of the rescued the returned hostages, and I wasn't able to reach anyone. And I understand, like, everyone has their process and their times, and it wasn't time. But he reached out. So we met the next day, and the mission had already finished. Everyone was back in Dallas, and I stayed an extra day hoping to meet this kind of people. I was hanging out at Hostage Square, and he said, well, I'm going to an event for my nephew, but I'm going to try to meet you before you leave tomorrow. And I said, well, give me the address. I'll go to your event. So I hopped on a Get, and I went to Yehuda, like 30 minutes away from Tel Aviv. And I was there with his family with this beautiful mural they were making for Almog. And it was all in Hebrew. I don't speak Hebrew, so I didn't understand. So I just went in the back and started painting the mural. And at the end, he introduced me to all of his family, and they asked to hear my story. So they sat around me, and they were relieved by hearing my suffering, which is, it's hard to explain, but it gave them hope.
And you came out of it, and you've...
So we went to his parents' house. It was Shabbat. So I had coffee with his parents in their living room, and it felt like we were family, and we didn't know each other. It was very, very special. And it's even more special now because Almog is back.
That's wonderful. So, did the people on the trip know about your
they did.
Your story? They did.
Yeah, and it wasn't really something that we spoke about. There wasn't really time for it. It was we were on a different mission, right? But some people came up to me and asked about it, and it was like smaller conversations.
Okay.
But yeah.
Well, you have some really interesting things to say that no one else has said in these interviews. So, what would you want people to know about your experience when you were over there?
So, I think that something that we would all agree upon was that we noticed how much they need this human connection. Donations, yes, they need donations. They need a lot of help from everywhere, everything they can get. But having us there physically and knowing that they're not alone really made a difference for them. They were very thankful for us. And that, in combination with the response that I got from the 5 people that I gifted hands to, came together and inspired me to make Hope Foundry. So I just launched Hope Foundry.
And what is that?
May 29th was my 20th anniversary back home. And I organized a little get-together to launch Hope Foundry. And it's a movement where you can purchase a helping hand and donate it to someone in Israel. And it comes in a little box with a story of Hope Foundry with a little bit of my background, and another one explaining what the Hosen division is. And it's a division inside the Hostages and Missing Family Forum that is in charge of mental health for the hostages and their families, because the Social Security in Israel covers the hostages and their first circle family members, but that's it. Like, cousins, uncles, friends, partners, grandparents, none of them get the mental health that they need. And it's kind of like a group of people that doesn't really, you don't hear about them much, you know, and they're kind of forgotten. And I really, because I know how important it is, I want to support them. So the Hosen Division gives people who reach out and need this kind of help whatever help they need, but they need the funding too. So by purchasing a helping hand, and you choose to either donate it or keep it, that's up to you, proceeds go towards mental health treatment for the hostages and their families.
You don't happen to have one with you, do you?
I don't, but I can send you pictures.
I'd love to see it.
I should have. It didn't cross my mind, but
just
yeah.
Beautiful. And what would you like to see happen based on your experiences?
Well, it's hard to fight against the whole world, right? But I think that if people notice that this isn't about politics, it's about humanity and about people and feelings and connection, I think just being there and showing support and acknowledging that this is wrong on every level, that people can be more sensitive towards it and like be more compassionate.
So, have you done any speaking since you've been back?
I have. So I spoke at the museum.
The Biblical Arts.
Yes.
There were several speakers there.
I spoke there. And then on May 29th. And yesterday I presented Hope Boundary to an office that does different kinds of experiences for their employees. And they invited me a couple years ago to talk about my journey moving to Dallas and my art, and I just never got to it. And then about 4 or 5 months ago, we put a date on it, and then I started Hope Foundry. So I already had the space, and I just turned it into Hope Foundry, and it was a very deep, meaningful presentation. So it was nice.
Have you been inspired to do a lot more since you got back?
That's the goal. The goal is to
art.
The goal is to have speaking engagements and try to make Hope Foundry big enough to make a difference, because I think mental health is what all of Israel is going to need right now.
Absolutely. How do you think did you ever connect with any of the hostages?
So
individually?
I have not. I don't think they're ready. I think their case is very different from other kidnapping experiences that unfortunately are common in different parts of the world, in the fact that now they're public figures. Everyone knows who they are, and they are overwhelmingly like strangled with love in Israel right now. And I think they need their time and their privacy and time to heal. So I haven't met with them. I would love to, but I understand that everyone has their time.
Is there anything else I didn't ask you about, or that you'd like to speak about while we're still filming? Any message you want to say?
Well, I think that we should all go back again. I would really love to be able to be there again, and you
would encourage other people to go and not be concerned about their safety or anything?
I felt safer there than here. Like, everyone is your family in Israel. It's a very difficult sensation to explain, but you don't understand it until you're there. So I would definitely encourage everyone to go if they can. They're going to need us for a very long time. Absolutely.
All right, thank you so much for visiting with me today. I really enjoyed meeting you.
Me too. Thank you.